Thank you all for allowing me to be here with you today. As Kelly said, I'm Andrew Rush. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of Redwire Space. And we live in a really awesome time right now. I believe that we live in the second golden age of space. First golden age, Neil Armstrong on the moon. Space race with the Soviet Union. But today, we live in an era where we have dropped the cost of going to space so much that, it costs $1,000 a kilogram to send stuff to space, where it used to cost $10,000 or $50,000 to send things to space, to send a kilogram of material to space, excuse me. And we have private astronauts on the space station right now. Random Japanese billionaire and his secretary are on the space station today. Michael Strahan, great football player, is going to go to space on Saturday on a Blue Origin rocket because of the innovation that exists. And these things are letting us, just proliferate commercial utilization of space. Nathan's company uses GIS. That's using remotes. That's using cameras in the sky to take pictures of the ground, so we can figure out where to put Walmarts. We can figure out where to put self-storage units. Matt's company is using robotics that are using GPS, that are using other means to figure out where they are. That's talking to satellites that are in space. And we, as Kelly mentioned a little bit earlier, and as our lovely host mentioned, we're sending people back to the moon. That NASA's going to put people back on the moon, the first woman and the next man back on the moon, and they're going to be there sustainably in our lifetimes, and that's amazing. If you have a child that is less than 20 years old, there's not a single moment of that child's life there hasn't been people living and working in space, which is really awesome. And of course, with all of this activity, we recognize that space is a warfighting domain. Russia, many of you might even be aware that Russia knocked a satellite out of the sky with a missile and caused a bunch of space debris, which nearly damaged the International Space Station, caused all this other calamity. But that's the world that we live in. And it's just driving this amazing set of innovation, this amazing and really economic activity in space. And I firmly believe that in our lifetimes, it'll be economically reasonable and affordable for us to go and vacation in space. And we will be using goods and services that are manufactured in space that we bring back down and use here on the Earth. And it's my pleasure to be involved in a really cool organization called Redwire that is actually taking the science fiction and making it science fact. This picture, I really love this picture. That weird two Twinkie setup there, or maybe Twix bars, the astronauts holding there, are new solar arrays that we built and that were installed on the International Space Station to augment its power, because the ISS has been up for 20 years, and just like your house occasionally needs some revamping, and when it gets old, ISS is the same way. So to tell you a little bit about Redwire now, and then I'll eventually tell you about where we came from, as Kelly mentioned, from Made in Space. This is our mission. We're here to accelerate humanity's expansion into space by delivering reliable, economical, and sustainable infrastructure for future generations to help make that second golden age of space a reality. We have these 5 amazing strategic focus areas. The first one is space commercialization, which is really what it sounds like. It's about enabling people to do new and interesting things in space, do manufacturing in space, of products that, because you manufactured them in this awesome environment of space, the zero gravity environment of space, they have new and interesting qualities that we find economically useful. Imagine optical fiber that has 10 to 100 times better signal transmission than traditional optical fiber. Imagine rather than being able to grow just a few CAR T cells to do cancer treatments in a lab here on the ground, in the absence of gravity, you can grow tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of those cells to do really, really amazing therapies. And that, if you go kind of out into the future, that is what's going to enable, space factories. It's going to enable people, really drive people to go and stay in space. Our second strategic thrust area is that of digitally engineered spacecraft. Space is awesome, but space is also really parochial and conservative. Space traditionally, we're willing to fly anything to space as long as it's flown once before, which is, not really the best approach. And so we're by really just applying sort of digital engineering techniques and modeling and simulation techniques to the way we do satellites, we can do that faster and respond to an entrepreneur's desire to put something in space quickly by applying those techniques. The third area, one that's particularly near and dear to my heart, is on-orbit servicing, assembly, and manufacturing of satellites. The way that we've traditionally done satellites is we build them and we sort of origami fold them up and fit them on top of the rocket and we blast them into space. And so we have to make them fit in that launch fairing and we have to make them survive the rocket ride to space. Rockets are awesome. They're the reason every 4-year-old loves space. But they subject your payload to 8 Gs and they shake it like it's in a paint can shaker, which is not great. So we put a lot of engineering into designing it to survive the rocket rather than optimizing it for its operational environment, which is scientists and engineers and entrepreneurs we know is inoptimal. But by building things in space, optimizing them for space, we can get so much more capability per dollar, so much more capability per kilogram. Because as a space guy, I think about things in terms of kilograms than we can traditionally do. And that's really there's a fantastic future of large-scale things that we can build in space that enables. We also do some really awesome things in advanced sensors and components, as well as space domain awareness and resiliency. Understanding, neighborhood watch, making sure the satellites and the people in space are safe from would-be adversaries, whether it be, Russia, China, or other people. And I really love this graphic. One of the things we're really, really proud of at Redwire is the amount of stuff that we do. If you're seeing a launch that's going out of Cape Kennedy, there's a better than even shot that there's something that our fine folks built that's on that vehicle. In the first quarter, I think we're gonna have 9 launches that have our stuff on it, which is pretty cool. And that's everything from small satellites in low Earth orbit that are looking at the Earth to giant space telescopes to literally helping the Perseverance rover go to Mars and land on the surface of Mars. And then that little helicopter you guys seen, the little drone, we did thermal analysis for that to help it say this is going to survive the Martian environment. So it's pretty neat. To talk about some of the stuff we do here in Jacksonville. Here in Jacksonville, we build little factories that work in space. We build satellites that build themselves. They're going to go to space and do that. So, to show you a little bit about that, this is just kind of an eye chart of the history of what we've done. Starting in 2014, we built the very first 3D printer that could work in space, which is a non-trivial engineering exercise. So in 2014, we were able to actually manufacture the very first functional objects that were ever manufactured off the face of the planet. And then we started saying, hey, the real thing here, the real thing that helps people go and stay in a new economic domain is really capitalism, is taking an entrepreneurial approach to things. So we followed that up with a series of devices that we own and operate that do manufacturing, that do 3D printing in space, that make tools for astronauts, but also make tools for universities and well-heeled individuals. And then started to explore things like making fiber optics in space, making ceramics in space, that again, because you're sort of taking gravity out of the manufacturing equation, you can make these really, really awesome and valuable materials. And this is something that we're proud to just continue on into the future, getting into pharmacologicals, biotech, as well as larger scale manufacturing and manufacturing with, literally moon dirt. Because if we want to go and stay in an environment, if we want to go sustainably live on the moon, we got to live off the land. And this is a picture I really, really love. This is a bunch of our team members that are here locally in Jacksonville. They're shipping off hardware to go fly from Cape Kennedy about 3 months ago. And these people are all, our office is literally at Bay Meadows and Phillips Highway, across from this extended stay. It's a cool, it's a little humble building, but we're doing some cool stuff there, I think. But one of the really cool things that we're doing here is a mission that we call Archinaut, and this is the very first satellite that will manufacture and assemble itself in space. And again, Why does this matter? Well, if you look down here in this bottom left picture, right now, the traditional state-of-the-art satellite like has these cool like fold-out solar arrays. And they're like 6 feet across when they do that. And they generate, you know, a kilowatt of power. So maybe like what a reasonable computer runs on. But, you know, in space, like we've managed via like Moore's law to shrink compute really, really tightly. But, you know, if you want to like send and receive data in space, like you're really still subject to physics. And physics doesn't care about Moore's law. Physics wants like a lot of power and like a big dish to be able to send stuff back and forth really efficiently. So with this technology, with this Archinaut technology, we can actually build really large solar arrays that are like 5 or 10 times bigger than what you get on a traditional satellite, which lets me put a lot more data, a lot more power through my satellite, so I can generate a lot more data, so I can do a lot more stuff in space, which really just opens up a lot of different applications. Like soon, in like literally the next 3 weeks, NASA's going to launch the satellite called the James Webb Space Telescope. The James Webb Space Telescope is awesome. It's got a mirror that's 6.8 meters across, which is like basically the size of this room. And it costs $10 billion. That's $10 billion. The Hubble Space Telescope that we all know and love, its mirror was like 3 meters across. It cost like $3 billion because it costs so much money to make these things origami unfold themselves in space and do that in a way that we trust. This technology enables us to build things as big as James Webb or bigger in a way that's actually cost effective. And that's just really incredibly game changing. Now, the next slide hopefully will be a video that plays, that shows you how Archinaut 1 like actually functions. So let's see if it works. Yeah, great. So this is a little animation of the Archinaut 1 satellite kind of going by, and there's and the cool thing about this is there's a 3D printer that can make things that are much larger than itself, an extended structure 3D printer, and then that robotic arm that does actual assembly of the satellite. And on this satellite, that robotic arm, it's like it's like 4 feet long. It's one of and that spacecraft itself is only the size of like a dorm room refrigerator. So it's actually like the smallest satellite with a robotic arm of that kind of class really in history. And all that structure you saw, that big like kind of diagonal guy there, that wing, that was assembled in space. And that's like that's basically like a big solar array. So to talk about some other stuff that we do, because again, just thinking about those 5 strategic focus areas, one of those areas is also that advanced sensors and components and helping us, kind of move things along as they are right now. We're really proud of this technology that we call ROSA, which is a roll-out solar array. Because right now, the way we do solar arrays traditionally is like we kind of fold them up, again, kind of origami fold them up. But ROSA is what it sounds like. It's a rolled-up solar array. That if you go back to that picture of those space Twix bars at the beginning, that's ROSA being installed by an astronaut. And so we're augmenting the power of the space station. These were sent up in the trunk of this capsule that SpaceX makes called the Dragon to go up to space and be installed. And it's rolled out like that. And you can see that right there in that picture, rolled out like that. And so we're installing actually 6 new arrays on the space station. When all those are done, we will have improved the power production of the space station to over 100 kilowatts of power, which is like a small neighborhood of power for the space station. So that we can do great science, we do great exploration and commercialization, and get ready to go back to the moon to stay. Now hopefully this next video will play, which actually shows this right here. You see astronauts down there at the bottom, and you see that solar array roll out like that. And that solar array is like 30 feet long, maybe like 6 feet across. And it generates like each one of those generates about 20 kilowatts of power. The cool thing, if we can go back, I wonder if we can do that. Yeah, so the cool thing about that is you see the bottom, like those little astronauts there, the bottom in the left there. So you just get the feeling of the size and the scale of what's going on here. And that's, personally, we do a lot of stuff on the space station. A lot of the payloads that we build operate there, help the astronauts out. And that's really, really humbling, and I'm really proud of the team that's able to do that. But one of the coolest things about this project in particular is that solar array. It's on the outside of the space station. So if you go out and look at the space station, which is a really low power telescope right now, you'll see that solar array. And we were like, you can see what we kind of changed the configuration of this eighth wonder of the world. I don't know, I get excited about it. Thank you. So, so Redwire today, spoiler alert, Redwire today is 600 folks. We're a publicly traded company. We're based here in Jacksonville, which I'm just really, really honored to be able to say that. But we didn't start there. In fact, we trace all this back to 2010, when Made in Space was founded actually in Silicon Valley with the vision of enabling people to sustainably live and work in space, and saying, hey, manufacturing technology is the way that we're going to enable people to do that. And really worked like at that time, space was not a hot thing. Elon Musk had not, put his Tesla in space. It was just this thing that aerospace contractors did on the side. And so there wasn't any VC money available. So the founders of Made in Space really bootstrapped the organization and got to the place where we were able to do this, this is Commander Butch Wilmore, who was the commander of the International Space Station over Thanksgiving in 2014. And he's holding in his hand a little plastic ratchet that we 3D printed for him in space because we heard him over the radio say, well, I've lost my ratchet, so I can't produce these tools. I can't complete this work. And we were able, because we had a 3D printer on the space station, produce this tool for him so he could go and finish his job. And you can see him, he's very, very happy about having that little ratchet. Demonstrating how transformational it is to have a local real-time manufacturing capability in space. And you think about how impactful that is. You think about many of you have probably seen the movie Apollo 13 and how they had to Rube Goldberg machine together a solution to get their little carbon CO2 scrubbers to fit. If they'd had a 3D printer, it would have been much more, on board, it would have been a much more boring movie, for sure. But we started there, and we were always customer focused, saying how can we deliver value? We had this giant vision, right? Enabling people to sustainably live and work in space. How do you boil that down to digestible chunks of saying, look, we're kind of we're young folks that you don't know very well. Let us do something small for you that can be impactful, and do that in a way that we were able to, pay payroll, and then move that ball forward, which is kind of a common thing you'll see. So we're very customer focused. We're always very vision focused as well, trying to find things that satisfy the customer, but also move us toward that vision. And that was really the company from 2010 to 2014. And then in 2015, the next era for us was 2015 to 2019. We kind of expanded the leadership team. I myself became CEO of Made in Space in 2015. We're about a dozen folks, $1.6 million in revenue. And really just built on that success of printing things for the astronauts and started doing that commercially. And then really won a contract to start doing that manufacturing and assembly of satellites in space. That was a really, understanding the customer, understanding what they were looking for, and winning that was just truly transformational. Enabled us to grow, to 80 folks. And always stayed very customer focused. What do they need? What will they trust us to do? And also very vision focused. Enabling people to sustainably live and work in space via manufacturing technologies. And we grew that forward. And then in 2019, 2020, that's kind of the next era for Made in Space and for this journey to Redwire. At that point, the company had been around for 10 years. It was founded by 4 folks straight out of college, incredible, passionate entrepreneurs and technologists. But we all, that's 10 years is a long time. So people's lives kind of change, and they say, hey, some folks kind of looking for a transition. And we raised a small amount of outside capital to put into a few different areas. We had 10 different payloads, that 3D printer or the optical fiber manufacturing device, either on the space station or in various stages of development. We're working on that satellite to manufacture and assemble itself. And sort of started looking for ways to level up, saying, look, there's a lot of gas in the tank here. We're very vision focused, we're very customer focused, but how do we both level up and then potentially enable some founders to say, hey, I want to do something else. And we were able to find, after, admittedly kissing a lot of frogs, we were able to find a private equity firm that was growth minded, that said, hey, we really like what you're doing and we want to, to help you do more of that. So why don't we acquire you and, combine you with some other companies and really enable that, sustained, accelerate humanity's expansion into space. We found a commonality of vision there with some folks that had some substantial capital in this private equity firm called Aero Equity Industrial Partners, which is actually based down in Boca. So right here in our very own state, which enabled us really to transform and to continue to accelerate. And from there, in the last 2 years, we've acquired a total of 8 companies that all do really amazing things in different areas of space, and enabled us to really become almost like a vertically integrated, really transformational company that both has that flight heritage. So when somebody says, hey, I'm willing to fly anything, as long as it's flown once before, we can say yes to that, as well as have those innovative approaches like 3D printing and robotic assembly in space. As I mentioned earlier, we've done things like supplied hardware for the Mars Perseverance rover. We're on every single GPS satellite. We're basically everything that's ever, from now, that's gone to the space station, we're on now, which is like really, really awesome. And we also, had this really amazing experience in going public via a SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition company, which was really just a really awesome experience. Definitely one of trials and tribulations. Going public is no joke. It took us longer than you would expect to pull off. But this picture right here was taken in early September when we went to the New York Stock Exchange and rang the bell and became public. But throughout all of that, the thing that has enabled us is, again, to stay customer focused, say, how can we provide value to you now while being vision focused, saying, how are we accelerating humanity's expansion into space? And that's setting us up really well, I think, for enabling that second golden age of space. Because that, for me personally, for the 600 folks that work at Redwire, that's the thing that motivates us, is that vision. As some of you know, I used to be a patent lawyer. Being a patent lawyer is it's a great career. It's a great business. It's an easier way to make money than space. But this is the thing that just really is exciting, is enabling things like this. Enabling, a commercial space station where NASA and the Russian Space Agency and the European Space Agency and Merck and Pfizer and J&J all are doing awesome stuff in space, is the thing that, is that vision that we've stayed focused on, and those customers that we've stayed focused on in order to go from, a startup to a public company. So thank you for letting me tell you a little bit about the cool,